you did that the other podcast, and I fucking loved it. Welcome to me? Yeah, that was you going. Welcome to the motherfucking Lab Boys podcast. This is episode 56. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. I cannot believe we made it to 56 episodes. Real quick, for people that have been watching us for a little while, you guys can tell that season 3 has been a little bit different. We've gone through some changes. Our lovely guest, E-Man, or I want to say one of our hosts, E-Man, wasn't able to fully commit to season 3, so we brought on Paradise. Something happened in Paradise's personal life, and unfortunately, she's not planning on being here for the rest of season 3.
Paradise not here?
She's not. It's weird. But Paradise kind of looks like E-Man just a little bit.
Hey!
But for real, hope everything is cool with her, though, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, very cordial and amicable. And it's the motherfucking Lab Boys podcast. My name is Alwa Gordon. I rep that 88 over everything. That's that 88 OE, baby. And I'm also here with... That's pretty
boy,
dope note, yeah?
It's a good note. It's your boy K. Sean. I am a Costco member, and I fucking love my Costco details, my Costco benefits, dude. It's all good. Get your shit in bulk, dude. I said I love my Costco details.
I don't know what that means. We're also here with...
Yeah, that full days.
Hey, the comeback king. Ooh. Don't call it a comeback.
It's fucking E-Man.
Hey, new father. Or I guess not a new father, but
I've been a father, bro.
Oh, okay, you've been the man. Okay.
All
I
right.
see. We're also here with a really special guest.
Yeah, my name's Drew Glover. I'm a council member, and I love the energy.
Yes. Are you a council member too? On top of the council member?
Council member.
Council member and Costco member? Or?
I am a council member and a council
member. Costco's dope, dog.
Hey, it's the motherfucking Lab Boys podcast. One of the things we wanted to do in season 3 and use our platform a little bit better is just to bring to life some very real issues that affect the community that we're in. So really stoked to get Drew on. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about homelessness in Santa Cruz, what that looks like, what are some things we can do about it, what are some ways that we can change that. With that being said, can you give us just like a 30-second or a minute-long introduction into homelessness in Santa Cruz right now?
Or a 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 seconds of homelessness in Santa Cruz.
For people outside of Santa Cruz that may not know the homeless camp.
How dare you just reduce it to 30 minutes?
So, I mean,
how dare you?
I did it kind of before. But just, so homelessness in Santa Cruz is nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and it has a lot to do with the cost of housing and the way that the government's been structured. So we have a housing market that's unregulated, rent that's skyrocketed because there's no way to control it, no eviction protections for people. So that results in folks getting evicted. Also, people run into all kinds of different problems, from emergency health situations to unforeseen life changes. So all of that are factors that lead people to experience homelessness in Santa Cruz. And in Santa Cruz, there's been a consistent kind of practice of pushing people around, criminalizing them, doing citations, moving them from one camp to a park to a shelter to all over the place. And even most recently, as in November, after some of the other shelters closed, there was a kind of organic structuring of a group of people over by the Ross Gateway encampment, or Gateway Plaza kind of spot where Ross is and all that kind of stuff. Right. But then as time went on and the weather got worse and worse, more and more people came to that spot because it was a place that not only provided a sense of shelter that was consistent, so they weren't having to move every night from door shelter to door shelter or whatever, but it also made it so that there was a sense of community. Yeah, when you talk to a lot of the folks that are there right now, there you go. Especially the women. They talk about feeling a lot safer in that space because there are people that are looking out for each other. A lot of older people that were experiencing homelessness are living in the camp, people with walkers, people with wheelchairs. Really, people just don't have a place to go. People that were living out in the woods before they had a place to stay at this camp. So it's there. It's been there since October. The issue, though, is that people didn't like seeing it. And they didn't like some of the stuff that was happening, from what they said was because it was there. So a lot of times, especially around issues of homelessness, people focus on the rates of crime or the potential reality that there are people there using drugs or some of the other aspects that are less savory but are symptoms of a larger problem. The issue with homelessness is it's the most visible expression of poverty, and poverty in general. Like, this isn't just an issue with Santa Cruz. This is an issue that's nationwide, where we're looking at booming populations of people experiencing homelessness in the majority of all of our major cities, and not having enough housing, not having enough shelter, and not having enough resources in which to do it. So with that camp being there for so long, it's raised a lot of frustration in the community. People are saying that they weren't feeling safe being able to walk on the levee, and on the flip side, there are people that are living in the camp saying that it's helping them get stability, it's helping them grow. So the city, just to wrap it up really quick, because I told you it was going to be longer than 30 seconds.
No.
Oh, good. He's the one that put the 30-second mark on it.
No, just for people that don't know, before we jump into it.
The city recently has been going back and forth. I've been a staunch promoter of things that are called transitional encampments, which are established camps that have rules and regulations, but that people can feel like they're part of. Some of my colleagues on the city council have voted with me to stop the closure of the camp. First, there was a date that was going to close. We realized it was never going to be able to be closed on that date, so it got pushed back, and then eventually we decided we're not going to close it. We're going to do a management plan. We're going to move everyone out, we're going to clean it because there were a lot of health issues and fire code stuff that was going on, and then move everyone back in. Then the following week, the city council flipped, essentially, and the majority of my colleagues voted to close the camp. That opened up a whole nother issue with something that was called an ex parte order, which was an order the city went to get from the Superior Court here locally in Santa Cruz, which made it possible for them to evict people from the spot, collect their belongings, or arrest them if they refused to leave. Wow. While that was kind of put in place by a local judge, the people that are involved in a federal lawsuit right now against the city because of this thing called Martin versus Boise, which if you don't know about it, you can check it out. But it basically says that you can't criminalize people for sleeping outside if there's not enough shelter space for them to be offered in the community. So if we have, let's just use small numbers for example, if there are 10 people that are sleeping outside but we only have 2 shelter beds, then the other 8 people outside can't be criminalized for sleeping outside because we don't have a space to offer them. Wow. So there is a federal court case going on right now with people that actually currently live in the Ross camp against the city, saying that they're displacing them without an adequate place to go. So the plaintiffs in that case, after the court gave the ex parte action to the city to be able to forcibly remove them, got a temporary restraining order from the federal court in San Jose, which stopped the city from being able to move. So over the last week and a half, the city has been in the courtroom in the federal courts in San Jose, which I spent Friday and Monday alongside the people there that are fighting to keep the camp there. Unfortunately, yesterday, after 2 days of fighting in court, the judge decided to dissolve the temporary restraining order, opening the doors back up for the city to remove people. So the city has now placed a 72-hour vacate notice on the camp, and it will close Friday at 10 a.m.
Oh, wow.
So then those people will be, and so this is where things get tricky because supposedly, according to the city, we have enough shelter space to move those people from the from the Ross camp into the VFW, the Salvation Army, the 1220 River Street, all these other locations. But even
do we have enough space?
No, that's the thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Not
That's
at all.
what they're saying.
They're saying that we do, but we don't. And even in the reports that the city produces, it says that we have these facilities that have 40, 50 beds at these different spots, but the available beds are between 0 and 15 at the most. And there's like 200 people that are in that camp right now. So the question is, if they're going to be moved, where are they going to go? And even if they go, some of the shelters that are being suggested for them to transition to close on June 30th. So that means that they'll only be able to be in there for 2 months, and then those spots are going to close, and those people are going to have to go move somewhere else. Where are they going to go? That's the question. And what we're really concerned about, myself and other advocates that are working with the people of the camp, are we don't want to see these people pushed out into the wilderness, pushed out into the door frames of businesses, pushed out into the neighborhoods where they're going to be more vulnerable for physical attacks. They're going to be more vulnerable if they're women for sexual assault, and they're going to be more vulnerable in the situation where they can be criminalized for being in different places. The city has said that they're not going to be enforcing our sleeping or camping ban as much because of the Martin versus Boise decision, but our trespassing citations have skyrocketed. So they've traded one citation for the other, and so we're still criminalizing people, putting them in the criminal justice system, and giving them citations that they can't afford, which is going to hurt their credit. And if you have bad credit, then you can't get housing, and it creates this really crazy cycle of why are we not investing our resources in figuring out ways to support them? And so that opens up a whole nother can of conversation, because then it becomes the conversation of how and why and where and when and all the different questions of what does it mean to help people and what constitutes compassion. Some people argue about enablement, and so then we get into this conversation of where do we go from here. It's a kind of famous quote from Dr. King, where do we go from here? Chaos our community. You know, are we going to build community, or are we going to continue what we've done for the last 30 years and push people around from one place to another without looking at the root causes?
Right.
Are there like any programs like starting or anything like that that'll help them get back onto their feet, or like you know what I mean? And as like just moving them, and like, is there anything going on as far as having them like rehabilitated?
Because I think that's what this whole initiative is, right? That's what this whole...
So the transitional encampments are that in one sense. There's other things like the downtown streets teams that exist here in Santa Cruz, where you see the people going around picking up trash downtown. They earn, and so this gets a little bit of criticism, is they earn gift cards. They don't earn money, they earn gift cards to be able to go and buy things and all this other kind of stuff. Plus, that program, while it's great and to see people out there engaged and participating in the community, is really, really expensive for what it's doing. The transitional encampments that I mentioned before, they are modeled after things that are in place in Portland, Eugene, and Seattle.
Gotcha.
But one specifically in Portland, Dignity Village, is a great model looking at ways, because it creates a camp-like structure or an encampment structure, but it provides structure. And that's what the main issue with the camp is right now, and the main concern that the community has is that it's kind of like a free-for-all. There's a general level of organization because of the camp council and the people that are helping to keep it together, but there's no set guidelines, there's no regulations on drug use or alcohol use or people coming in and out or what that looks like, and there's no requirement for people to participate. And so with the transitional encampments, it provides a safe, stable place for them to sleep. But the model, instead of it being a fully paid model, which the other shelters are like, which make them really expensive, the transitional encampments get people that are in the camp to become participants, essentially, in the upkeep of the space. So they are required to provide 10 hours of sweat equity, that's from picking up trash to running the security gate to cleaning the facilities to making food and coordinating the kitchen with people. And that's been shown not only to increase their abilities to gain a sense of self-efficiency and self-efficacy and skills that they can then take out into the job market or say, hey, I've been successful at doing this for X amount of time. It also creates a sense of community. And that's super important, because if you have someone give you something, like here's this, no strings attached, whatever, there's the likelihood that you may not pay as much attention to it. But if you have a sense of ownership in something that you built, part of a community, you're going to fight to protect it. And that includes not only doing the work you need to do, but making sure that the people within the community are abiding by the rules so they're not going to ruin it for other people. And so there's a whole bunch of shared responsibility.
So in this whole conversation, we've been talking about how the community, it helps this whole issue. But what about if we were no.
I love the hamburgers.
No, hold on. So now that it's going to get shut down, or what is the consequences of that? What is? Yeah, tell me the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, like I said before, the reality that people are going to be displaced. Yes, it's great that there's the potential they might move into other shelter space. The issue is moving their stuff, consistently having to move their stuff, downsize their things into 2 totes, essentially, that can be put into a shared storage space at the other camps, and then move all of their other stuff into storage. And also it creates that sense of instability, because if you're living in a shelter, and some of these shelters, the model, like for example, the one they have at the Benchlands right now is really problematic because they don't provide food. So they allow people to come and go as they please, but there's no responsibility for the distribution of food. So are people expected to like leave during the day and then go and figure out how they're going to get food for the afternoon and then come back? Why is there no system that's built into it so that food is being available? And then, like I mentioned before, the severe danger that exists being disconnected from community. And on top of that, there are people there that, so there is drug use in Santa Cruz. I think we can all agree on that. And there's drug use, and I think this is something that's important to stress, is there's drug use within the housed community as well as in the houseless community. And so it's not like people that live outside are only the people doing drugs. But in having a sense of community in a space where people can at least be around each other, it decreases the ability for people, or the probability of people ODing out in the middle of the woods by themselves.
Exactly.
Period, right?
And then that opens up a whole nother conversation about drug use, the realities of harm reduction programs that work on needle exchange and the efficacy around that from avoiding bloodborne diseases and other kinds of public safety issues. And then even the concept of safe injection sites, which is a whole nother thing, which, you know, is radical in our communities and culture. But you know, if you look at like countries like Portugal and other places, when they all have safe injection sites, it provides a sense of support for the people that are going there, because a lot of times people that are using don't want to use, but they feel like they need to. So if they can go somewhere and have someone to counsel them as they're measuring out their hit and making sure it's not too much, and offering them services at the same time, it has a much higher rate of transitioning people into recovery. So there's a whole lot that goes into what we're talking about, and there's a lot of different moving pieces to acknowledge, because you know, there's this misconception that people are homeless because they're addicted to drugs, but in reality, a lot of times people become or develop what's called a substance use disorder because they become homeless. You know, one of the first things to go when you become homeless is your self-esteem, because we've become so accustomed in our culture to dehumanize people. We use the words like transients or the homeless as if they're this like one blob of creature that's moving on. They're like, oh, it's like the horde. But we need to, in losing that sense of self-esteem, people sometimes turn to self-medication, or with our criminal laws that we have in place, not allowing someone to sleep or rest, disrupting that natural cycle, making them have to stay up all night so that they're not going to get a ticket, and then potentially sleep all day. But if they can't sleep all day, then they're in this constant cycle of drug use because they need to stay awake. So there's so many factors in this topic of homelessness in Santa Cruz that, you know, we could dive deep.
And I think it's really good to touch on what you're saying about dehumanizing, right? Because I think if someone is homeless, it's very easy to look at them doing drugs and say, well, that's a bad person doing a bad thing. Whereas if you have, like you're saying, if you have a house or you have, you know, a stable job or career, it's like, well, that's not a bad person doing a bad thing. It's a good person. They did maybe a bad thing. Is it challenging for you when you're out in the community meeting with people that are dehumanizing people that are homeless? How do you combat that? Because I know you're a compassionate person, and you have a love for the community. For the people that don't see them, I don't want to say as humans, but for the people that don't see them, or they only see them under that window, how do you face that challenge?
So I don't know. I think you think you know that I work at the Resource Center for Nonviolence.
Correct.
That's where I work for my day job outside of politics.
Hey, shout out.
RCMV. What? It was a quick break.
It's lit.
RCNV, just so you know, it's a great place to be.
So back to the topic.
Right, back to the topic at hand. I work at the Resource Center for Nonviolence. I train in nonviolent conflict reconciliation. I study the philosophies of Dr. King and nonviolent leaders dealing with struggles very similar to the issue of homelessness, very similar to addressing the issues of poverty, and advocating for people that need a voice, that are usually vulnerable or left out. And there always has been, you know, especially in doing the studies of nonviolent resistance, there's always going to be those people that are saying that it's the wrong thing, that the people should be dealing it with themselves, that they're not worth it, they're inferior, you know, all those other kinds of issues. But it's important to realize, and this is why I tell people it's really bad to have these conversations online, is because the person that you're speaking to truly believes that what they're saying is the right thing.
Right.
And as soon as you can acknowledge that, then it makes it less difficult to have a conversation with them, even if they're cutting you off consistently, even if they don't let you get a word in edgewise. It's because they're angry, confused, afraid, or have been raised in a way that has established a different set of values or principles that those of us who may have different perspectives completely disagree with. But in that reality, they're seeing it from the opposite side of the lens, where they completely disagree with what I may be saying. And so my goal is to try and calmly and respectfully reiterate my perspective while listening to them. And it's really important, both not only for them to hear me, but for me to hear them.
Right.
They all, people that express concern, or they want the camp to be destroyed and moved somewhere else, or they want the people to be moved, or they want people to be gone. It's usually based in a concern for their safety. It's usually in concern for their family, or it's usually in concern for their property. So whether it be their private property of their house, and they don't want their house being vandalized or slept around, or they don't want their property value going down. Maybe it's their bike that got stolen. Maybe it's their car that got broken into. All of these are very real concerns, and people, and especially in the economy that we live in, people have to work really hard for the things that they have.
Right.
And so if you've worked really hard for something for a long time, and someone comes and starts to threaten that, then they're going to become the enemy. And it's really easy to look at the poor person and say, you're the problem because you're poor, you're lazy, you haven't done what you need to do. Look at me, I've worked, I have my own house, why can't you be more like me?
Wow.
When in reality, they should be looking at the system that is perpetuating and creating the people that are living in poverty, because those systems are the things that are holding us all down, no matter, even if we're living semi-comfortable middle class. The reason why it's difficult to get past that, or that's in constant threat, is because of the value system that runs our economic structure.
Damn. We taking shots, baby. Hey.
Yes.
It's getting motherfucking deep. So for the people that don't know, or maybe that are not from Santa Cruz, you are a newly elected council member, correct?
Fresh from the 2018 election.
And when did you join Costco?
I've been a member of Costco for years. On and off, though. It's an on and off relationship.
On and off?
Yeah, on and off. I know. I'm sorry. I don't shop there all the time. But they do have a great selection of headphones and a baller return policy.
Yeah, it's good. It's really good.
It is good.
Hey, shout out Costco.
You can wear the shirts and then return them. It's weird. Yeah, it's weird.
I've never done that.
I've never done that either.
I did hear from one of their clerks. Now, I've never done this, mind you, but they did tell me
What's her name?
at the return counter that you can buy a chicken, eat half of it, and return the other half of the chicken, and they'll give you your money back. So if you're watching, that is straight from the Costco return desk. They told me that.
Hey.
And it's because, dude, they know nobody's gonna do it, right? But if you
Eman's going right now after this podcast.
No, Eman's face when you were saying, he was like, Eman's face was like,
Yo, he's eating chicken all week.
And you know what's funny is that my opponents are going to go on this and they're going to be like, he's bought up by Costco.
Oh, yeah.
they're gonna return shit like.
Go through my financial records. I have no connection with Costco whatsoever.
Disclaimer, we're not sponsored by Costco besides from Krishan.
Yeah,
He is
Krishan's
sponsored by Costco. They pay his motherfucking bills. But you are a newly elected city council member,
Yes.
and you're one
thought you were talking
of
about me.
you're one of the first black city council members.
Yeah.
In a city like Santa Cruz, what has that experience been like?
A roller coaster, I guess.
Okay.
There's the really highs of the reality of being able to set that new standard. It was really, just in the sense of running a city council race and saying, elect me so that I can make positive change. And by the way, I'd be the first black city council member in the history of the city.
Right.
Like why? And so that's a whole nother question, and we could talk about why. But, and then the other side of it is the reality of being a black candidate and a black politician, because as we may all know, and as the data has shown, black people, especially black men and people of color in general, have to work twice as hard for the same level of recognition as other people. It's easier and more quickly that people will try and discredit us or say that we're overreacting or find some kind of character flaw or all this other kind of stuff to try to tear us down. And then we have to be the calmest, most zen people in the world when talking about anything serious or controversial, because the moment that we become passionate or engaged, it becomes this conversation of whoa, maybe you're a little bit too much there, guy. And it's like, well, what are you talking? What?
I just got passionate.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
But it's been really great in the sense that I not only am now in a position where I can make some positive change. I am the first black man ever to sit on the public safety committee looking at public safety and police relationships in Santa Cruz. But being able to provide a visual representation of black leadership in government locally in Santa Cruz, because I believe, as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, you can't be it if you can't see it. And so be making sure that young children of color in Santa Cruz can see people that look like them in leadership positions, see people that look like them helping to engage, and someone to look up to, so that they can say, one day I want to be a city council member and engage. It doesn't pay very well, but it makes a
But you don't get in for the pay, right?
No, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's the thing, don't get in for the money, because it's definitely.
Do you feel the pressure of like, I gotta get this right? So I know I don't want to equate this to Obama, but I know with Obama being the first black president, it was, I gotta get this right. Like people need to see that this can work. Do you feel that pressure at all, or is that kind of just something that's in the back of the mind?
I mean, I guess it's there, but I would say it's more, I have to get this right as in I have to unapologetically push for justice. I think that's the key. There's been a lot of opportunities for me to waver in that dedication, where it's been political pressure, whether it's been community pressure, whether it's been people that I know saying like, hey, maybe you should tone back the social justice vibe a little bit, and I look at them like, what? Like, why am I in elected office if I'm not going to push for change? And why would I jeopardize or bring into question my values or principles to play politics? Like, I it's been very much so that people want me to have run on the left and govern from the middle. And that is where we don't see change happen. That's where we see the same kind of stuff happen. And it's where we have to start. Like if I would have gone with the establishment, I would have voted to close the Ross camp. 4 out of 7 of the city council members voted to close the Ross camp. The reality of that, and there's really an ideological battle going on the city council right now between the establishment and the way things have gone, and the progressive values and the way things could go. And that's the pressure that I feel, and constantly trying to weigh the strategy. Is it more strategic for me to be outspoken and an advocate for positive social change and raise awareness about certain issues, or should I play politics and be quiet and not abrasive and try to lay the framework for potential support for future policies sometime in the future? And I think, again, as you can, you'll learn about me. I really love Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
She's dope.
She's dope. And the idea of I'd rather make change happen in 2 years than have nothing happen in 4 years is my perspective. I'd rather get in there and make positive change happen, show people that it's possible, provide a framework for people to be able to experience that change, because I think all it really takes is for us to make that shift. And then once we make the shift and have that paradigm woke, hey, this is how it should be, then people will be able to see what's going on. But we've been stuck in this groove for so long. It's scary.
So before you entered this whole city council thing, what were your goals? What were the things that you wanted to accomplish in doing so? Why are you giving him shit?
There we go.
It seemed like he needed the props. I don't know. Look at him. He worked. All right.
I needed a little props, bro, in my life.
I didn't know what I wanted to be until I was probably late 20s. And then after that, I wanted to make positive change. I had been doing photography for years and it was fun, but I didn't feel like I was doing something substantial. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I decided to move back to Santa Cruz and re-engage in the community, re-engage in school, and start doing community organizing, because that was around the time Mike Brown was murdered.
Oh, wow.
And that was around the time that Darren Wilson didn't get indicted for the murder of Mike Brown.
Right.
So I kind of came back to Santa Cruz, coordinated a social justice conference at Cabrillo, worked on a project to save the dental hygiene clinic, raised $100,000 to save the dental hygiene clinic at Cabrillo. Mm-hmm. And then my first big action that I ever coordinated was called Breaking the Silence, and it was a national day of protest to protest against the failure to indict Darren Wilson. 200 people downtown, die-ins in the middle of the street, marches over to the Resource Center for Nonviolence, and then having me leading a talk on white supremacy, violence in the criminal justice system. And then from that, and then continued as just a feeling of this is something that I can see myself doing, where it's a positive message, it's a purpose. There are people that are learning from it and then ideally pivoting on their own world and fighting for change. And then just since then, it was whatever capacity I can do or I can be in to be a positive impact. And so that's whatever that is. And that became an iteration of the city council, because I was doing community organizing. Someone's like, you should run for city council. I was like, no way. And that happened a couple times back and forth. And eventually I was like, all right, let's figure it out, right?
Should I? Will I? Won't I? Will I?
I was doing like the Matrix stuff for a while. But then eventually ran in 2016, lost, because my mom died in 2016 during the campaign. And so I lost by 1% because I left the city to go be with her when she died, because she was in Washington. And then came back, ended the campaign, lost by 1%, decided to run again in 2018, but in 2018 flipped the script and did it where I raised as little money as possible and used recycled materials. And still, I got it? You got it?
No.
But then came back full circle, and so now we're here. And I never saw myself doing this if you would ask me 5 years ago.
Dude, what? It's dope. Congratulations, man. You're here. You're talking about all this shit, man.
Hey, E-Man, I feel like I haven't heard from you in a little while.
Yeah, sorry, I've been talking a lot.
No, it's perfect. What's on your mind?
So I got two. We asked this last podcast, how important is voting in your opinion?
Ooh.
I love how you didn't even see my shirt.
See?
Vote or die. All right, I gotta open my shirt now.
And why?
Voting is incredibly important. It's your voice, and poor people.
Locally. I'm not talking about locally.
Poor people and people of color don't vote. They have some of the lowest turnouts and students don't vote. The people that vote are wealthy, property-owning Caucasians for the most part, and they have a very set parameter of what they want to see: private property protection, lower taxes, and it bettering their community, looking at parks, looking at these kinds of things that benefit a certain population. You need to vote, because your vote can go into supporting both local and state and national candidates that can push your principles and values forward. But if people don't vote, then the people that do vote are the ones that make the decisions. Exactly. So if you don't vote, then you are saying, I don't care what happens with my life, I'm going to let you choose for me. Wow. And then you can't complain. People complain and they don't vote. Well, you don't have a right. You don't have space to complain if you don't participate in the system. Now, if you've been disenfranchised from the system because of the criminal injustice system that we have right now, that's a totally different thing. But you can still register people to vote even if you can't vote. And so that's the same thing with people that aren't from the United States and don't have the legal right to vote because they're working on green cards or whatever it is they're dealing with. You can still register people to vote. You can still get people out and make it happen.
And then
Your second question.
Yeah, my other one was throughout your career, what was like something that you're like most proud of, or like you're like something that you could say that was like a
Political career,
greatest achievement for you. So, yeah.
Greatest
No adolescent career.
All right, your high school career, man.
High school career.
What was like
High school career?
the greatest
Or
football
political
game?
career?
The greatest football game you ever played, man.
I was
It was me and Jimmy.
I was the first black senior class president of Harbor.
Hey!
We all went to Harbor.
Harbor in this bitch.
Harbor, motherfucker. Boom, 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 boom.
That was good.
Harbor will kill your
But I
ass.
think probably the most impactful one. I mean, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question was the work. It wasn't political, as in like when I was elected, because I've only been elected for like 4 months. But it was raising the $100,000 to save the dental hygiene clinic at Cabrillo, because that program has a 90% graduation rate. Of that, the majority of those are women, and 50% of those women are women of color. When you graduate from a 2-year vocational program, out of that program, you can make $80,000 a year. So it's a program that is actively lifting women and people of color out of poverty by getting them jobs, but it was getting cut. And so our ability to save that program and keep that system.
Yeah.
Boom, left-handed.
It was getting
That's
cut
right.
though. Why y'all cut?
Oh no, because he brought it back. It wasn't cut.
Gotcha.
Bam.
Come on.
You look like you had something on your mind. What's going on, buddy?
No.
What's up?
That was it. It was good.
Hey,
High five.
for people that are watching this that see homelessness in Santa Cruz as an issue, but may not have the resources or the knowledge to make impactful change, what are some things they can do? Where can they find more information?
Volunteer. Where could they go volunteer at? That type of stuff.
You can volunteer at Food Not Bombs. They do meals every Saturday and Sunday, vegan and vegetarian meals. They give them out to people for free down at the post office. You can either go down there at 4 o'clock on Saturday or Sunday and help them serve, or you can connect with the organization beforehand and help them cook earlier that day or gather food or any other things that they do. You can volunteer at some of the different shelters. There's different programs that focus on storage or providing safe sleeping spaces. You can go to city council's meetings and speak in support of what you think the city should do. You can write letters to the city council and say with your suggestions as to what you think we should be doing around homelessness and getting involved. You can join one of my teams that I have working and come and work with me in City Hall.
Hey.
There's all kinds of ways for people to get involved. It's just a matter of what they feel like doing. You can go and cook food and then take it out and give it to people for free. You can go buy 100 cheeseburgers and go and hand those
Okay, we
out.
gotta stop with the Costco shit.
Why do we gotta stop, dude?
Yeah.
Okay, you're getting paid. We're not getting
You
paid.
can it's basically just do what, think of something and do it, I think is the ultimate question. But you can always contact me if you're watching this. You can contact me at my city office. It's just dglover at citysantacruz.com. We can connect and I can point you in the right direction.
Hey, that's right. This is motherfucking Lab Boys podcast.
Hey,
Krishan,
Lab Boys!
Before we get out of here, we want to thank you guys so much. But Krishan, I feel like you might have a fire topic to lead us out.
Unleash.
Shit, man. What the fuck? Okay, cool.
On the spot.
Hey, on the spot topic. Real quick while he's doing that, just a couple of quick announcements. May 15th, it's going down at the Crate
that's
Place.
right, you better be there.
Album release party, 16 Summers. I'm really, really excited. Super happy to be dropping this official album. It'll be available on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music. Everywhere else you can check out the music. I highly encourage you, if you're in town, to come to the live show. Gonna be doing something really special, and that's kind of all I will say about it. Krishan, I'm looking at you.
Shit, man. All right.
What's up, man? What you got? You got something.
Y'all ready?
We all know
it's a
you
little.
got-
It's a boy girl topic, man. Y'all
A
good?
little bit of boy-girl thing?
Little boy girl, little boy on girl,
Boy
little
loves
girl
girl.
on boy. You know, they love each other. What they gonna do? What they gonna do? They gonna get married?
Oh my god.
Come on, man.
So no, hey, I want to ask y'all, what do you think? Some of the things that guys get insecure about in relationships with women. What are the things that guys get insecure about that girls are turned off by?
Other dudes, right?
I mean, there's just one of many. Go ahead, let's talk about it.
I would say, there's a lot of reasons, right? But I think something that comes up is being insecure about like other dudes in their life. I think that's like a major turn off for most people. But what I have seen is it kind of be a turn off, but then that person kind of will change the way that they act. Like, let's say boy girl, right?
Boy, girl.
Boy likes girl. Girl likes boy.
Can we just do like person in person?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Oh, yeah, okay.
No, the reason I asked the question is because sometimes I think that
Just person A likes person B?
Because just with and I don't mean to perpetuate the whole gender roles, but I'm saying that sometimes guys get insecure about different things that women get insecure about. But we can do that too.
Gotcha. So two people, both
Two
really,
humans,
both really insecure.
Human on human.
A little bit of human on human
So
love.
what are the things that we get insecure about in relationships? Let's do that.
I mean, I think, like other people. So what I was saying is you have, two people that like each other and they're getting together, and then one person in their life, you could be insecure about. You're like, hey, I don't like your relationship with XYZ. Right, or I don't like your relationship with this person, and that can, in some ways.
What the fuck you saying?
So let's imagine I'm in a relationship with someone and I don't like the way that they interact with someone else.
Okay.
Right, that's an insecurity of mine.
The relationships that I have with other people.
Right, that could be insecurity of mine, but then that could translate, or what I've seen it translate into, is that person then changing the way that they go about their lives.
Right.
Which never works. Never.
I feel like.
Oh, E-Man's like.
Oh, do you have something to say? Go ahead.
Say it.
No, go ahead. I want to hear what you
No,
have
well, I
to
was
say.
just gonna say.
Oh, he was gonna say.
I was gonna say. Well,
We're talking about human on human.
back in the day when I was like,
Slanging.
starting
Slanging ass.
Slanging D.
Slanging D.
baby.
Slanging E-Man
Come on,
D.
man, come on.
You're a ladies'
No,
man.
I
you
get
know
real
it.
insecure, and I wouldn't take off my shirt.
Oh,
You know,
shit.
and my girl would always be like, "Take it off." Be like,
Take
"No,
it
I would
off.
never take off my shirt." You know.
All right.
Damn.
And that
man.
was one thing that I was really insecure. And she was like a turn off for her, because she was like, "Take it off," But yeah,
Why was it a turn off for her?
Yo,
she wanted to feel skin, bro. I don't know. But
because she wanted to feel skin. That's fucking
All
wild.
right, Drew, what you gotta say? What you think?
Yeah, I would say potentially.
Drew's like, I've never been insecure in my life. I get all the girls,
I think it's
including that chicken on the class.
the concern if the partner is enough for the other partner. So like whether insecurity about themselves, whether or not they're smart enough, fast enough, strong enough, confident enough. And I can speak from myself that I think that there's a lack of confidence or the belief in oneself, then it's usually a turn off for anybody that you're talking to.
Seriously.
Do you guys ever realize that growing up, it becomes about different things? Like your insecurities can be about different things. Like when you're younger, it's simple things, right? It's like, oh man, if I'm good looking, or if I'm this, or if I'm that. And then when you grow a little older, you're talking about like fucking career goals and like, hey, if I'm good in this, and if I'm good at this, if I have a good path in front of me, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It changes growing up. So
financially too, right? Like
everything. That's what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
And that's the kind of some takeaway from that is it's always better to be conscious and appreciative of the moment at hand instead of worrying about something that you don't have or that you're worried about, because you're going to spend all your time consumed with worrying about what you're not good at or what you don't have, instead of being appreciative of what you do have or what you do got. So
and enjoying the moment too.
enjoying the moment.
That's a tough one, though. That's a tough one. Sean, what about you, man?
Yeah.
You didn't say anything.
Yeah, man.
You
come on,
brought the
let it
topic
out.
up.
was the
It's all
question.
right. Come on. You can tell.
I said it. That's what I'm saying.
What?
You really did though.
About
I did.
insecurity?
Well, I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying? When you get older, you start, you doubt other things. Like, dude,
got it.
growing
Oh,
up-
that was it. Okay,
Well,
I thought that was just like a weird segue.
Well, no. Well, growing up, I've always been confident. I've always actually been
Okay,
cocky.
okay,
No,
okay, flex.
No, hold on.
Okay, it's a
hold
flex.
on. Hold on.
Yo,
No. I've actually.
Costco ad.
All right. Well, dude, I've
Confidence in bulk.
always been cocky. I've always had a Costco membership because I've always been the secondary on my mom's account.
Exactly.
And I still am, dude. Shout out to my mom, dude. But like,
shout out to Keishawn's
but
mom.
like, you know what I'm saying? When you grow up, it becomes about different things. Like, I've always been too cocky. I think I've been
Okay.
overly like, you know. And that's But I think when you get older, I think it's just about other things, and you worry about, can I provide for this girl the way that I've always thought I would?
Or
you know what I'm
is
saying?
is she gonna think I'm providing for her?
You know, like growing up, I always looked at my dad, like, you know, the way he provided for my mom and the way that he, you know, bought the house and everything. It's just a happy household, right? I
Right.
always wanted to do that. So like, And when you're young, you're just like, man, yeah, I'm gonna do that. That's what's gonna happen. But then you get to a point where, shit, man, like now it's coming, right?
Like you gotta put in the hours, bro.
Yeah, I gotta have a happy home with my wife and all this shit. It becomes a little bit more. You put a little bit more thought into it, dude, and I think that is the things that I was going to talk about.
Gotcha. Have you seen that play out in like a relationship before? Some of those fears like come to life, or is that something that you're able to like, hey, this is just the way I feel, and it doesn't need to be part of our relationship?
The reason I brought that up is because I've seen friends not really fulfill the destiny that they thought that they would, right? And then they become depressed and insecure and more insecure. It just perpetuates their or furthers their insecurity that they've already had, and it just gets worse. So that's why I brought it up.
Good man.
Good question.
My man. Hey, it's the motherfucking Lab Boys podcast. Before we get out of here,
100 kills all y'all.
Before we get out of here, major shout out to Drew Glover, man. We really appreciate you coming out. I'm a big fan, a big supporter of the message. Is there anything you want to tell the people before we get out of here?
Get involved with politics. It impacts every part of your life, whether or not you pay attention to it or not, and it's much better to be in the know and have your voice represented than be out of the loop. If there's not room for you at the decision-making table, as Shirley Chisholm says, grab a folding chair and make one.
There you go.
Fuck, man. You had to practice with that.
He's ready, man. He stays ready. Hey, it's the motherfucking Lab Boys podcast. Krishan, what can these people do?
I see y'all looking at the video and y'all had a good experience with the video. Look down. There is that red subscription button. Hit that red subscription button. And right next to it is that post notification bell. Hit that post notification bell. That way you get reminded every time we release a video. This is Lab Boys episode 56.
Hey,
out.
We will see y'all next week.
It's great to be here with y'all, man.
Yeah. It was a good video. It was a good video.
You gotta press the button.
It's not done yet. It's not done yet.